name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
The same time.
Okay. So, just to introduce this talk, so this talk is about coming back to church. It's just been, already, it's just been something that's been on my mind lately, so I decided we can talk about it. Uncle Samir really wanted me to talk about the Holy Spirit. It's Pentecost Sunday, so we'll see where we can incorporate him into this topic. Firstly, I was told that we're a quiet group on Fridays. So we're going to open up the poll, and I have a series of questions to ask you guys. This talk can get really deep if we want to get deep, or it can be very shallow if no one really talks, and I just waste your time. And then in the text, you're going to write my first name, Marina, then B as in boy, A-R-S-O-U. Wait.
Can you just write it?
Barsoum.
Barsoum.
Okay, so it's Marina, B-A-R-S-O-U. So my last name, what's the number? One word.
No space. Never space. Okay? Okay?
Wait. After the use 5 to 2.
5 to 2.
What is this? Wait, there's no M in your name?
You text. This is what you say in the text.
There's no space?
No M.
No M.
Wait, let me go here.
That's wrong.
Guys, that gets wrong.
Mr. Park, oh my brain's up.
Damn this cup.
You left us smart.
Alright. So the first question, we're going to see how this works out. I can see the poll, so at least that's. So the first question is, have you ever contemplated leaving the church? Have you ever contemplated leaving the church? So you're going to type A if the answer is yes, or B if the answer is no, and then just send the text.
Do you mean like the Coptic church, or this church, or like Christianity? Like which church?
The Coptic church.
Is your question or her question? 2 is no, yes, 1 is yes.
A is yes, B is no.
Wait, what?
The question is, have you ever contemplated leaving the church?
What's the question?
Guys, everyone quiet down so you can hear the question instead of asking what's the question.
Do you want me to log out? Alright, so we'll take the answers that are already here. So 33% of the people in this room said yes, they have contemplated leaving the church. 67% said no. Okay? The next question. How many people do you know have left the church? A is 0 to 5, B B is 5 to 10. C is more than 10.
Marina,
Says you have not
do
opened
you
the
mean
folder.
like left the church we never see them anymore? Or like left the
Yeah, it
church
says
we
you haven't
leave,
opened the
or like-
Hold on. Left the church as in left and never back.
Okay.
It says you haven't opened the folder yet.
Yes, all closed. Is everybody comfortable to just do show of hands? Yeah. Okay, because I was told no one would be comfortable.
Someone was comfortable, they wouldn't say anything.
Okay, so how many people have known between 0 and 5?
What?
Between 0 and 5 people have left. Okay, between 5 and 10,
For sure.
and then more than 10.
Easy.
So that's a pretty big number to just see where we're at. So we at least know 5 people that have left the church. And most of us know more than 10 people that have left the church. So what are some reasons why people leave the church? This was also a question.
Drama, like within, like gossiping, cliques, the drama within like
Okay, so drama. What else? Unwelcoming. Someone can approach them in the beginning and then say, hi, how are you doing? My name is so-and-so, and then turn back to their group and continue their conversation.
They don't feel like they fit in the group.
Okay.
Agnosticism, like just general. Yeah.
Any other?
Well, that's all the things that we mentioned has to do with the community that they're entering, people that make up that community.
Okay, so it's not really as much about the building as it is the people of the building.
I was gonna say like pressure, like for the community.
To do what?
Like how to dress, or how to like talk, like education, like all the stuff that we're asked all the time, and they just feel pressure when they're asked.
Anybody else? So I feel like as I talk to people, I get this idea that the church has become it's between me and God. I don't really need to be in the church. I can pray to God, I can talk to God, I can do whatever I want. It doesn't have to be a community. So there was actually a poll that was taken, and it included 5,137 Christians, and it asked them how do they express their faith or experience their faith. 75% of them said that they just pray to God. 35% attended church. 34% read the Bible, and then the rest either volunteered here and there as nonprofit or just attended Sunday school or a small group. So this idea around outside in the world is mostly like, it's just between me and God. It's an individualistic idea. However, sometimes it seeps into the church, and that's not the mentality our church is supposed to have. So it's actually interesting because we want independence, but God wants interdependence. So in the beginning, when God created Adam, it was just him and Adam walking through the garden. But that wasn't enough. That relationship of just him and Adam was not enough. He created Eve for him to have a partner, for him to be in fellowship with. So that's something that's really important. Furthermore, we know that the church thinks that, or the church knows, the church fathers know how important the church is, which is why they put it in the creed. We always say, one holy Catholic apostolic church. But furthermore, Christ knew how important the church was because when he ascended to heaven, that's the one thing that he left behind for us. He told the disciples to go and preach and to have a community and to break bread together and just to be together at all times. So he knew that the church was going to be very important for us. And I really think that the drop in the statistics that we've seen of people who attend church is because we can't answer the one question of what is the role of the church in our lives. So that's something. Some of us could say we just come to church out of habit. Some of us, our parents still force us to come to church. Maybe we're guilty of something, so we come to church just to have forgiveness. And for some of us, just, breakfast on Sunday doesn't feel that right. Okay? Ha ha ha. Okay. He does have like 40 jokes about Okay. So I can't tell you why you should come back to church without speaking about the church, the role of the church, and what the church is supposed to look like. So, he said there has to be a connection. So, basically, what is the church? One last thing. All the way in the beginning, how we spoke about Adam, God also wanted a family. So it says in Deuteronomy 7:6, "For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples on the face of the earth." So this idea of the church being a family is not a new idea. It's an idea that's been there ever since the Old Testament. Christ has chosen his people. He has wanted to dwell within his people, and he wanted a family for the church. So what is the church? Simply, the church is a family. So I wanted to give you this idea. When people leave the church, I guess for myself, the most common answer I hear is, we don't like the people in the church, right? Like we said, there's so many things wrong with people in the church, and that's why a lot of people leave. But when you think about it, when you're born into a family. Whether it be just your mom and dad, a brother or sister, just your mom, just your dad, anybody. You're born within a family. As you grow up, you might lose some of those family members. As you grow up, you might realize you don't like some of those family members, or there's problems that occur. But at the end of the day, it's still family. The same thing happens with the church. You're born into a family when you're baptized, and you might not like all the people in your family, but you work a way around it, because you still have to see them. It's still your family at the end of the day. So, what do you guys think about that?
I kind of always struggle with the idea, like, why the interdependence is necessary. Like, I know me and Samir always get into it of, like I love the church personally, but, like, for someone that struggles with, like, the people and stuff, why is it not enough to just attend liturgy and to leave? Like, why is that not enough for their faith, like, to themselves?
I think to really love God, you gotta love your neighbor as well, and to fulfill God's purpose in your life is to interact with your community and be of service to your community, and you have to pretty much specialize in something for your community and take that to its highest form of potential. And that creates the interdependence upon each other, where you specialize in something, the next person specializes in another part, and we each take our skills that God has given us to the limits.
How can you love God that you don't see and you don't love your neighbor?
But that doesn't preface, I'm not prefacing I'm not saying I don't love other people, because we've talked about loving without having to be super close with someone, and loving as my brothers and sisters in Christ, but doesn't mean I have to be involved in like all services and come to retreat. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's people that have that mentality, and like she asked the question, like, why people left the church,
I think
and they're very, yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna be.
Yeah, it's done.
So I was thinking, well, you're limiting the service that you can do for your brother by leaving your brother. So interdependence is a unit. It's everyone. So you leaving church early. Let's say your brother needs you. Where's he going to find you when you're at church? So, in that sense, you're limiting your service. Forget about them. Like, forget about you needing them. You may not need them, but they may need you. So, being present is part of that interdependence.
I'm actually going to go into this further.
Also, like, it's important, like, to be present for like yourself sometimes, because our faith isn't always like steady and strong. Like sometimes you fall into your things, or like the fellowship and the services that are given to us are for our good, not for like any other reason.
People don't see the church as that kind of family sometimes, because people feel like they have more of a choice when it comes to the church. We don't really have a choice when it comes to your actions.
So, something interesting I found is the church is not an option, the church is a necessity in our community. So, what is the church supposed to look like? The church is supposed to look like one body. So each of us play a role in this church, and we say it all the time, right? We all have our talents that we can contribute, and we all have something that we can give to the church. But actually, when I was looking into this topic a little more, when you think about all of our talents, I heard this analogy, and it was like, Christ, when he died on the cross for us, He used his talent. So his talent was he knew that he can give salvation to all of us. So that was his talent. He did it to the fullest of his ability, and he offered it up to us. So he did his part. So now for us to be his body and the community, we need to do our part. Have you guys ever heard of the human table? Yeah. So what is the human table? Just for those who don't know.
So basically from like a standing position for you at an angle, lean back, and the way that you become interlocked stabilizes you, so you're able to stand even though you're only really balancing yourself.
Exactly. So what would happen if one person would be like, you know what, I'm not holding my weight anymore, I'm getting lazy, and I'm just going to put all my weight on everybody else? Will the table survive? No. Because at the end of the day, this weight is divided against all of them. So it's very important, because if we end up leaving the church, if we just think about ourselves, if one by one we all leave the church, right? We take our talents with us and we leave the church. What will this church look like? Empty. But what else? The building physically will be empty. What about the service? Weak. You'll have 4 people that are burnt out to the max, can't do anything else. And that's what happens. I feel like we come to church all the time and we take. Then once we feel like the church can't offer us anything else, we dip. And we blame it on the church. I'm not being challenged. My needs are not being met. I'm not growing. I'm not changing. But we don't realize that the church is just a building. The people inside of it are what make the difference. So if I'm not challenging myself to grow, then the church is not going to grow. So I was actually talking to someone the other day, and he was telling me, he was just like, you know, our church, I feel like I can't go back anymore because I'm not growing. I'm not being challenged. We've been talking about the same topics ever since we were in high school. We haven't dug deeper. We haven't asked any uncomfortable questions. We're kind of just here, and we're here for the fellowship, and we're here for the barbecues and the retreats and everything that we do, but we don't dig deeper. So when we look at the church and what it's actually supposed to be doing, the church is supposed to be in koinonia. And that means fellowship. And fellowship doesn't mean barbecues or retreats, but fellowship actually means giving up from myself to the service, to the church, giving back. Does that make sense? Sorry, I get a little passionate about these things. So, just simply, if we ask Abuna to do everything for us, right, and we don't play our role, then our church will not grow. Our church will not prosper. Our church will not bring in other people. And the whole point of our church is not only to satisfy our needs, but also to go into the world and gather more people, because that's what we're called to do. So what is the church supposed to do? It says in Hebrews 10:24-25, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So we're not only here to gather together, but we're here to spur one another towards love and good deeds, pushing each other to do good works. I actually heard a joke I was sharing with Stephanie the other day, and it was someone was saying that they come to church every Sunday. I hope you guys laugh. So I was saying, I come to church every Sunday so that at the end of the day when I die, I can at least look familiar to God. Like, that's it. Just so I can look familiar. Like, they don't do anything. Thank you for the chuckle. So I feel like sometimes that's what we do. We don't do a service, but we just come, show up, take what we can, and we walk away. So, something I read, and it said, the purpose of gathering together is to make the purpose of gathering together to worship is to make it easier to find God and difficult to forget Him. It makes it easier to find Him and difficult to forget. What do you guys think about this? When you are with your group, yes.
I think that that's actually something that Samir always winds up leaning back on whenever people argue with him about this, about like going to liturgy and then going home. Is that they're like, okay, you want me to serve, I'll serve outside church. You want me to do fellowship, I'll do fellowship outside church. You want me to, whatever, hang out, I'll hang out outside church with people from the church. But the one thing that, like, the necessity of the church is that you can't fail if you try, if you're in the church. but you can fail if you're outside the church, trying to find God on your own, trying to find service, trying to find whatever. But if you're here and you're present here, and it's something that Makar said exactly what Vivnoti said before, and with different words, is that like when you're here with a spirit of service and a spirit of seeking, you can't fail. It's impossible to fail when you're inside the church and really wholeheartedly doing your part.
But I feel like that's the spirit that we're missing. I feel like sometimes I just come and I do my tasks and I dip. I don't go out. Like Sunday is not the end all be all. It's not just come and gather together. There's a second part that we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be going out and scattering into the world. So it's those who had been scattered preach the word wherever they went. And something interesting, it says those. It doesn't say the prophets, it doesn't say the apostles, it doesn't say the priests, it says those. So anybody who gathered in the church and benefited from the church and was in the church went out and scattered. And when they scattered, they preached to the ends of the world. And then what happened? They brought those people back, they gathered again, and then those people went and scattered. It's a process that's just supposed to be going. Gather, scatter, repeat. That's it. And Pope Shenanigans used to always say you preach and teach. No, you teach and preach. So you come into the church, we teach you, we guide you, we build you up. You go into the world and you preach. You bring those people back, we teach them, and then they go out. I feel like we always stop at the gather. We don't go further. We come to the barbecues, we come to the retreats, we come to the Maharads, we come to all these things, but we don't go and scatter. How many of us, when we stand before God, can say we changed someone's life, or we did our purpose? So something interesting I saw is, when you say you're too tired for a service, or when you say you're too tired to do something, let's say at work, you're supposed to be helping someone. You might feel this urge to preach, right? You might feel the Holy Spirit telling you to say something. Samir, that was for you. So you might feel the Holy Spirit telling you to teach someone or to go say something to someone. So when you quench that, you're actually telling yourself, if you think about it, you're telling yourself that this person is not worthy to hear the word that you have to say. This person does not deserve to know Christ. You're making that judgment call by holding back what you're supposed to be doing. And it was really saying that God loves the college that you're in so much, or God loves the office that you're in, or the work that you do so much, that He put you in there to share. But we're being so selfish just holding it back. And I'm not telling you guys this, I'm telling this to myself as well. Like, we hold back so much, and when you think about it, it's us making the judgment call that these people don't deserve to know God. They're good the way they are.
So, is what you're saying that the reason why, like in looser terms, that we're failing in the church is because we're not preaching externally, we're not carrying out what we've gained externally? Because if we were gaining externally, then we would come back with whatever fruits that God brought. So is that like the hypothesis almost that you're saying, that like the reason why we're failing inside the church is because we're not carrying that outside and preaching outside?
I feel like it's a cycle. We're failing outside scattering because we're not succeeding inside the church. We're just coming to the church, but are we challenging ourselves? Are we asking those uncomfortable questions? Are we digging deeper? Because we can call it the church, but in essence it's us. You can blame everything on the church, but what you have to understand is when you're blaming the church, you're blaming yourself, because you make up the church. So if we're not digging deeper and we're not doing those things, we're not going to go and scatter into the world and preach. It's a cycle that just keeps failing itself because we fail ourselves.
To Mina's point, freely you have received, freely you give. So if you're getting a lot but not giving it, yes, you will give up. You start getting burnt out. So to answer your question, I do think that if you're not doing this scattering, this giving, you will eventually get tired and give up.
And I work with someone, she's a non-denominational Christian, and she so openly tells people she's going to pray for them, and she prays for them like in her workplace, and so close to her, and like she's not trying to do like overtly, but like if she was faced with a bad situation or like someone didn't, she'll like pray for them on the spot. And like I felt embarrassed for myself because I was like, I would never do that. Like, and I'm supposed to have like a stronger or like a more like deeper faith. And so I asked her, and I was like, you're not worried, or like you don't find it uncomfortable, like, you know? And she's like, I'm not supposed to be comfortable. Like, I'm supposed to share with everyone like everything that I'm given. And I asked her if you ever get in trouble, or like, and she's like, yeah, of course I do. But like, she's like, every single way, every single time, there's a way out of it. just because like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And she's like, no one can tell me like stop sharing like your faith, because she's not pushing it on anyone. She's just praying for people and like trying to like help everyone out. And like people actually come to her in her office, like people that are not religious, but they'll just be like, I'm having a bad day, can you pray for me? I think that's like insane. Like I don't think, at least I can do that. I don't know if other people do that, but it's just kind of like that's what we should be doing. It doesn't have to be like every day, but like people should know that like they need something or they need someone, you should be that person.
I feel like sometimes we try to be so politically correct, but you know, maybe you can say like that's a step for later, going out and preaching the love. But I feel like, do we do that within our own friend groups right now? Like when we meet together, I feel like all we do is go and eat, or we go and hang out, or we go and talk about something, but we don't really focus on each other. I know Joe used to always do this, and he's like, how's your spiritual life? We used to take it as a joke, whatever, it's Joe, but it's actually the truth. No, but it's actually the truth. Like, we don't check up on each other. Like, if we start a Bible study, it'll fail in a couple of weeks, right? Like, we don't continue what we start. Like, we don't edify each other. It's not about the fellowship just being hanging out. It's about edifying each other, making sure that we're bringing each other closer to God, that we're in this union. And I feel like that's where we're lacking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like our friend group, that's where we're lacking. We're not edifying each other. No? It's true. Any questions so far? Okay. So, what is a perfect church supposed to look like? So the perfect church, it says, it was in Acts 2, so after Christ ascended, it says, and they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, in the breaking of bread and in prayers. Then fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done through the apostles. Now all who believed were together and had all things in common, and sold their possessions and goods, and divided them among all, as anyone had need. So continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. They did everything together. They ate together, they prayed together, they went out together, they shared in anybody's needs. If anyone was suffering, they were there. If anyone was weeping, they were there. They did everything together. And then at the end, it says, and the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. He added daily those who were being saved. So I feel like the focus of the church, or the church should be not about attracting more people, but attracting the presence of God. That should be the main focus of the church. It's not about the numbers, it's not about how many people are sitting here, but it's about the presence of God being filled within us and us growing in the presence of God.
I feel like we say this is the ideal church, and then we say like, oh, this will be what happens to this community like 10 years from now. But I don't think we realize that like we're in that position now, right? Because like, other than our parents, who else is here in our church, right? It's no, the future of the church is us, right? So if we actually want to reach the goal of fellowship, having things in common, growing in our faith, all this stuff, having this open dialogue, asking tough questions, and getting the answers, I feel like we have to be the ones to actually put in the work and get to that point. But I think, like, I don't know what the issue is. Maybe it's that we're just comfortable or lazy, or we think someone else is going to do the work. I think like we all know like this is what we should be striving for, but I don't think we're all willing to take that step into investing the time and effort into making it happen.
I read a quote on Instagram. It was related to fitness, but it's related to this. It said, what would you look like if you started the things you wanted to do now 5 years ago? So, like in the same thing that Mina's saying, that like, let's say just in like helping with whatever, like doing all things together to help people and to whatever it is. So if you and your friend group went and found people who needed service for whatever reason, or how you could help others, then what would you look like 5 years from now? You know, how can you make your future self proud?
So one of the poll questions I had, which wasn't working, but it's what is one thing you would change about our church? what is one thing you would like to see change about our church? Huh? It was just
Marina, what did you say?
Marina wanted multiple choice.
She said it on the phone, so I thought.
Wait, you guys?
She's talking.
Thank you, sir. Alright, if you guys can text a one-word answer, just to keep it anonymous, and just to use this that I put mad effort into, just humor me for a minute.
Go back.
Go back to the bar. That's my new school.
Wait, why did you say
Oh, it's here. Try to do one word. Don't give me a second.
Guys, let's take this. This is very important. This is important to clear. Guys, kalungan mga bado, please. Is the size of the word that
That
has
means
any
more people,
significance?
a lot of people put that answer. As the word gets bigger, that means more people put that same answer.
Just say it out loud.
Right. We'll close the poll. Right. So someone elaborate on one of these words. So we have our word, what's the plan? Organization, let's pick that. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to wait for Abuna to organize us into groups and committees and to make this whole spreadsheet and to do all these things? This is where you guys interact.
I think drive is the best one there, because you made a comment about people starting and quitting Bible studies. But if we were to use like Abuna Anthony as an example, he started a Tuesday or Wednesday night Bible study that I get jealous about all the time that I can't be there for. But like that's been going on now for like a year, and it's because regardless of how many people are there, he was consistently running. So not only with Bible studies, but like in anything, in praying with your friends, you know, before you eat, or going to find opportunities for service, or having, you know, fruitful conversation. That's going to take like one or two. And again, we joke about Joe asking about your spiritual life, but that's again just consistency in trying to and drive and trying to do that. So if everybody had like a little bit more drive, I think that things would be better.
I think that's the key, that everybody has to drive. If we're depending on one or two people to drive the whole entire church, they will get burnt out. The results won't be as great as if everyone has drive and everyone's working and going together in one effort. a poll that was taken, and it asked the church. So there was a poll that was taken of 10,000 members in a church in the U.S., and it was asked, what is the main mission of the church? So it broke down the results into the answers of the priests and the answers of the congregation. So the congregation, 89% of them said to meet the needs of my family, and 11% of them said to meet the needs of the world outside. That was the congregation's response. When they asked the priests that same question, their response was 90% said to win the world, and 10% said to meet the needs of the congregation. So there's a confusion. We don't know what is the real mission of the church. And when you think about it, what is the real mission of the church? Is it only to serve the world or only to serve our congregation? No, it's something in between. There has to be a middle ground where we can serve the world and also meet the needs of our own congregation. And that only works if we all play a role. We can't expect Abuna to do everything. We can't expect Samir to do anything. Everything. But seriously, we're at this age where we don't really need to be served as much anymore. We're at this age where we can be very independent and take on tasks on our own. I don't know why we're still waiting to be spoon-fed. Like, it's something that we just need to take the drive and the initiative and do. We can get together and organize it. Organization, I'm sorry, that comes from us. If we don't stand in line, that's your fault. That's not the church's fault. We're not going to put red ropes so you know where the line is. Right? We do committees, we do reach outs, but if we all reached out to the people that we knew, there you go, your service has been taken care of, instead of Abuna texting everybody. There's so many ways that we can play a role in that I feel like we just neglect or we turn a blind eye to because we're so busy. We don't want to take on more responsibility, but that's how the church fails because we took everything from the church and we never gave anything back. That's how you lose generations. That's how you lose communities because everyone just leaves.
I think also to add on, one thing I realized in myself recently is that I don't like to be put in a position where I'm not 100% comfortable. Meaning, like, I like to be in control of every situation I'm in. I like the people that I serve to be people close to me, which obviously that's not a service because those are my friends. I like everything to just go according to my schedule, and honestly that takes away the meaning of service. So like, I realized a lot of the stuff that I do personally, it becomes more of like my convenience. It's never, service is like inconvenience. Samir always drives the point, it's like going out of your way to do something that you might not want to do, but for the betterment of others. And that's something I realized, and I'm sure some of us can feel the same way. Like, it's a matter of like inconveniencing yourself, although you don't want. It's doing what others don't want to do, honestly. And I think we can talk about this all we want for the rest of our lives. And if we never get to that point of us being willing to take something on, although it's an inconvenience, this service will never change, and it's gonna remain in the same stagnant pool of water that we've been in. That's when I just hung.
No, 100%. I agree. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I want to say something. It's much easier for the devil to attack one person than to attack a group. So if we are in a group, if we are supported by each other, it's much more difficult for me to fall into temptation. Because the devil uses the solo person to attack. There is a beauty and strength in being together and supporting each other. And I think this is a very important role of the church, and why I should not go have communion and leave, because you are losing this support system that when we are together and we are accountable to each other, it's much more difficult for the devil to attack me. If I'm by myself, if I'm home by myself, definitely much easier for the devil to attack me and to make me fall into temptation. And I think this is one of the very important roles of the church, and putting people together so that together we can fight the devil. Much easier and much stronger than by myself.
So originally, the goal of this conversation was to convince you to come back to church. But going through this lecture and going through the points, I realized I can't convince you to come back to church. I can only tell you what the church needs from you and what you can offer the church. And then from there, hopefully, it will inspire you to come back. It will inspire you to give your talents to the church and use them wisely, instead of just being selfish and holding on to them. So this was actually inspired by this song that I loved and I thought we could listen to.
I was blind to the truth, didn't know what I had. I was running, I was searching, but every place I turned for healing left me more broken than last. Take me back to the place that feels like home, to the people I can depend on, to the faith that's in my bones. Take me back to a preacher in a verse, where they've seen me at my worst, to the love I had at first. Oh, I wanna go to church. Trying to walk on my own, but I'm bound up alone. Now I'm making my way to the foot of the cross. It's not a trophy for the winners, it's a shelter for the sinners. In His power I belong. Take me back to a place that feels like home, to the people I can depend on, to the faith that's in my bones. Take me back to a preacher and a verse, where they've seen me at my worst, to the love I had first. Oh, I wanna go to church. I wanna go to church. Oh, more than an obligation, it's our foundation, the family of God. I know it's hard, and everything is hard, with sisters and brothers. Oh, take me back to the place that feels like home, to the people that I can depend on, to the faith that's in my bones. Take me back to a preacher and a verse, where they've seen me at my worst, to the love I had first. Oh, I wanna go to church. Yeah, I wanna go to church. Oh, I wanna go.
That's all I have. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
So you said that the people we don't need serve. We can't come to the church by for ourselves, right? But in my opinion, I don't think that we can come by for ourselves. We need some and let's say encourage, so like us can phone calls, like a not it's not gonna be worse.
So I agree. I think in the beginning we definitely need those phone calls and that encouragement. But I feel like also at some point it becomes an initiative on our end. You can't also wait. If you have the urge to be in church and to be with God, I feel like you can't wait for a sign or for someone to reach out to you or for something to actually go and take that first step. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's like a little harsh, but I just feel like it needs some drive as well.
I have one question and I want to elaborate on this.
Yeah, go for it.
Where was the vote taken from? Like, was it from Catholic churches or different?
Churches across America in general, because the attendance in churches is not only in our church, it's all over like all churches, all denominations. Attendance is just dropping because everyone is in this individualistic idea.
I don't know your name, but when she brought that up, it also reminded me of someone wrote in inclusion. So I think it also brings up the point of inclusion because at one point, so if you're coming in, so I'm from J City, so a lot of my friends come from Egypt, or a lot of the people that I'm with in church are coming from Egypt. Nobody knows how, unless someone tries to reach out to them, sometimes they may not know of the churches in the surrounding area. So at one point, you have to reach out to them, and then you also have to find a way to keep them there, because there's a lot of different churches. Some churches have other issues than other churches. Not every church is perfect, unfortunately, but at the same time, if one individual or one group of family, one family, is having issues with being included into the church, let's say someone just doesn't like them or they get looked at the wrong way, which that happens a lot in churches across America, they're going to tend to leave, and if nobody tries to bring them back, they're not going to come back. Sometimes they may lose the faith entirely because they're, especially them coming into a new country, I mean, the stress for them is different. And not even the fathers, but people who have already been here and they just go to a different church in general, they don't feel like they're accepted. And Admiral also mentioned this, he doesn't feel comfortable, sometimes you may not feel comfortable with other individuals, you tend to stay away from them. But service is a way to kind of force yourself to be with them. If you don't want to serve those peoples, and they also don't feel that you want to serve them, that's going to be a huge issue. And that right there, that inclusion, is going to shatter, and that family is just going to leave or go to a different church.
I agree with him, over what he said, and sometimes I feel that if we're feeling more secure at work or in other places, and I feel attacked in the church, even though it may not be consciously made, it can be something. In a way, I feel that I'm not being accepted, and I feel more comfortable outside. Then why should I bother? If I feel more safe, if I feel more supported from people outside of church, why should I bother and come here? It's supposed to be the house of God, and I'm getting that from outside. So
I think it's human nature to feel you want to feel equal to everybody. So when you come to the church and there's someone being a leader over you, then you don't feel like you want to come back. You want to have an equal role in the same mission that everyone has.
I kind of want to talk with Christina and Bola, and what was your name? I'm sorry? Arseni was saying together, actually. I think they're very closely related, and that I think it's kind of wrapped up with what Bola was saying, it's self-awareness. So knowing what you need. So in Christina's case, I'm just going to use you as an example. Let's say Christina wanted somebody to give her a phone call to come to church. You knowing that is a big step to seeing okay, I can't contribute to the church if I feel like an outsider, if I feel like somebody's not included, or whatever. If Arseni sees a family that needs, connection to the church or services, then again, knowing that you could potentially put yourself in an uncomfortable situation to help them, I think that's where your responsibility is. But if you're in the case where you don't feel like you're that you're not at that point in your spiritual life where you're not even at a point in your spiritual life, but you need to be served and you're far away from God and you have then that's a different situation. I think that's kind of what I was saying, that kind of knowing what you need first, and we're all going to have needs, but I think there's a point where you could take that step forward and say, okay, I want to give back. We all are going to have our needs, and we're all going to have things that we're going to personally need, but it's not it hopefully wouldn't stay in an us-oriented conversation. That we're just going to sit here where I need something, and you're not giving it to me, so now I'm going to make the decision to leave,
Wait, can I also add? Then I have a lot. I feel like in our community we're very, very, very judgmental, and anyone that's different, we sort of make an animosity. It's his group, my group. It's we're not accepting
we're not accepting each other's diversity. And if this person is different from me, I don't want to deal with him. And if this person is doing something new, then he's going to mess up the system, things are going to change, oh my God, whatever. But there has to be a sort of, okay, I know, me and you are different. We have different personalities, but we have to accept our differences. And that's not there. Anything that's different, there is a sort of, okay, this person is my enemy now. We're not comfortable anymore. So, then you find these little groups and then, no one is getting together, and then it becomes a social thing, even though we don't want it to be turned out to be a social thing, it becomes a social thing, and the spirituality of the church gets lost.
Right.
So what is the solution?
So we talk about this all the time. How do we fix it? What's the approach to take a serious step towards change? Because I get it all the time. I know personally people that leave for, and I'm gonna say it, the most common reason I get is a sense of entitlement. It's off the roof in this church. I get it all the time. That's second to judgmental. The people's, at least that's what I get, is they come, they see people, they feel entitled. This is my church. This is not, you're coming, you're a visitor in my church.
So it's like the welcoming aspect.
So they feel that they are visitors in someone else's church.
And like you're coming to someone else. But how do we approach that?
I think the talk about entitlement and judgment is it's part of nature and everyone does it, but you can't look at someone and be like, oh my God, he's judging someone, or oh, he feels entitled, or you know what, maybe he's better than me, or I'm better than him. When you're in a church community, you can't have that mindset. You need to first approach anyone or anything in the matter of with a more humility overall, where it's not about I, it's about you, and everything you act is always about the other person. And you'll realize, like, hey, time will fly when you're focusing on the person that's in front of you. You know, while I'm there and I'm trying to make the best of my presence being there, you know, things will go much smoother. But if I'm going to be in a church where I'm trying to prove a point, you know, and then when that point doesn't get proven and my expectation doesn't work out, I get frustrated and then I'm going to leave because I'm not going to feel welcomed, or I'm not going to get what I'm really looking for, whether it's the right thing or not, you know. But when you just forget about that person being judgmental or them being better, you really don't know someone's situation or what they're acting, why they're acting in a certain way, or how they're feeling. You know, they might be feeling just like you, but they're not acting the same way. You know, but if you just switch the whole conversation, it's not about me, it's not about what I do, it's not about how you're making me feel, it's about how are you feeling? How are you feeling today? Are you feeling good? Can I help you feel better? Or maybe I'll just excuse myself.
But Milty, that's like Mina said, it's unique to every.
I think that's the only common denominator we all have in this room. We all have a level of humility that we can always upgrade. You know, but we can't convince someone this is what you have to believe, this is your judgment. You know, you can't judge something, you can't feel entitled. You gotta change that, like, because if you're gonna look at that, when I first interact with someone, I'm gonna be like, oh, he's judging me. Of course he's judging you. But it doesn't matter. He can judge you because at the end, your interaction with someone else isn't about yourself. It's about that other person. You focus on the other person, you'll be able to serve him and everyone else around you. That's just my perspective. I don't know if that's...
I feel like we've boiled church down to you know, it just being this place to facilitate you know, social functions. And like people complaining about judgment and you know, people being elite, I get that, and I'm not saying that that's not a bad thing, but you're never going to escape that by virtue of the fact that we're people. If you go to a Greek church, you're going to find these problems. If you go to a Russian church, you're going to find these problems. Ethiopian church, if you go to another Coptic church, you're going to find these problems, so you're just not going to escape it. So in my opinion, if you really want people to be grounded in church, you need them to really understand that in church is where they can honestly express their faith to the fullest potential, and that you can't take communion at home, you can't confess to yourself. You know, you need the church for that.
I don't know
but that's not what the
No, I
first church is. And if you accept that this is, okay, this is present in everywhere and all churches, we will never get to the right thing. The right thing is the original church, the church of the Book of Acts. And I think we should not, because if my standard is this, I will never get above that. If my standard is this, I'm going to at least try to reach the right standard.
I'm not saying like don't try to like be better, right? So it's just like if you're coming, you're like, okay, like I'm being treated badly, I'm not gonna come. It's just like, what are you doing?
That's pathetic.
Stephanie, you're from.
Yeah, I was gonna say that like my opinion might be insensitive a little bit, but I feel like we don't take enough accountability on our own selves for our spiritual lives. Like, of course, for me in my situation, I have like a lot of friends here, and I've never felt, you know, out of place. Like if I leave for a few weeks, I come back, okay, everything is back to normal. I know a lot of people don't have that setup that I have.
It's all set up, guys.
Please finish.
What I'm trying to say is that, yes, it might, this came to pass because I was hanging out with someone in like a different setting. And she was saying like, oh, this group is not gonna, she didn't want to talk to the group because she felt like animosity towards them. But at the same time, she was gonna judge the group if they didn't say hi to her. So I was like, you don't want to say hi to them, but you're gonna get mad if they don't say hi to you. So in the same
drama.
What I'm trying to say is that kind of what George is saying, that yes, like there might be cultural things or like situations with like the group as like a small society that they act in a certain way, but at the end of the day, you're gonna be responsible for your own spiritual life. Like yes, of course, the church should be welcoming you and opening their arms to you, but we also have to take accountability for our own selves. Like as a like 24-year-old person, I can't say, oh, my servants didn't call me, that's what I didn't read the Bible. Like, there has to be some sort of self-accountability, like, okay, we feel judged, and that is the fault of the church, but at the same time, we can't just blame the church and like the society for everything. Like, there has to be some kind of accountability. Like, again, it's a two-way, everything is a two-way street.
Yeah.
Last two comments, so I can respect your Okay, last three comments. Danny, Sarah, and Brady.
So I think part of the issue is that we're more reactive than proactive. Like what we do is we react to everybody else and what everyone else is doing. But like if you look at yourself, when was the last time you took initiative to tell someone else why don't you take initiative? So I think that's a big issue in the church. We're waiting for someone to take the first step, and we ourselves are not willing to take the first step. So how is that fair? There's no, you can't justify your, yeah.
There was a time I was talking to my dad about this because like it bothered me how like there were so many issues happening and like all these like politics in church or whatever, and he told me like to never focus about that because it's just gonna hinder you from like your actual goal. Like what are you going to church to do? To pray or to see if your friend is talking or like whatever it is. Like he said, at the end of the day, if you focus so much about every single little problem happening around you, it's gonna hinder you from the reason you're even in church. Like why are you in church? You're walking to church, you're praying. And then like have the conversation, but if that's gonna bother you, like don't let that conversation get way between you and Christ.
So this is really off topic, but
the whole conversation.
Oh my God.
Come on, Marina.
But I was just gonna say that I think this is the first Friday that this room has been this full, and it's just nice.
Oh.